So next up, podcast listeners, we have the daily Biden dumpster fire. And it's a good one. It's a really good daily Biden dumpster fire. So the White House, you won't believe this. The White House abruptly cuts the feed of President Joe Biden mid-sentence as he asks questions at a wildfires briefing. So you got the wildfires happening in California and Nevada. And the president decides that he's going to ask some questions because he's getting information reported to him in this meeting and he's listening. And as it's fed to him, he's like, hey, I've got a question. And so they cut him off. By they, I mean his staff. So the White House abruptly cut the feed of President Joe Biden's briefing on wildfires with federal and state officials. During Monday's visit to Boise, Idaho, Biden received a briefing about the ongoing wildfires that have plagued several states out west. While Biden spoke for much of the briefing, at one point he said he wanted to hear more from George Geisler of the National Association of State Foresters. And so at that point, Biden wanted to ask, a question. You're president of the United States, you inquiring minds, you want to ask questions. And I'm sure there are tons of questions that could be asked, like, how did it start? How do they generally start? How do we start? Kind of common sense questions. I wouldn't mind knowing these things as well. We have this clip, and here it is.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
One of the things that I've been working on with some others is
so one of the things, can I ask you a question? One of the things I've been working on from others is, and then the plug was pulled. I mean, they just pulled the plug and it was over. And Biden gets up and, he leaves. So podcast listeners, this is a daily Biden dumpster fire for sure, but it also is scary because it's proof that Biden is a mere figurehead. This is proof, ladies and gentlemen, that the president of the United States is not in charge. He's a mere figurehead. Imagine doing such a thing to past presidents. Imagine doing that to Barack Obama. I mean, he would have laid into you. You don't pull the plug. I mean, you may not agree with Obama, but at least he had, the wherewithal to ask questions and to process through them. But they don't have that. The Biden staff doesn't have the confidence that Biden has that capability, because he may have asked for ice cream at the end. He may have said, can I ask you a question? Do you have any ice cream? Who knows? That's what they're afraid of. The staff, are afraid that he might ask a question that just doesn't make any sense at all. So they try to limit his ability, which means he, ladies and gentlemen, this president is not in charge of running the country. This is dangerous stuff. Can you imagine the same thing with George Bush or Bill Clinton or Ronald Reagan? They wouldn't have put up with that. I mean, Reagan famously said when he was in a debate, they tried to pull his plug, and he said, I paid for this microphone. I mean, he's there, he's engaged, he's part of it. And of course, later on in Reagan's second term, at the end of it, there were all kinds of reports that he was in mid-stage or early stage, potentially Alzheimer's, which is awful, right? But that was like at the very end. We're at the very beginning of the Biden presidency, ladies and gentlemen, and who is in charge? It's got to be the staff, because they're actually deciding to pull the plug. So the article continues. This isn't the first time the White House intervened in blocking Biden from being heard by the general public. Last month, the president's audio feed was cut as he was able to respond to a reporter's question on his administration's military withdrawal deadline from Afghanistan. In March, the White House cut the feed as Biden said he was happy to take questions while speaking to Democrat lawmakers at a virtual event. The latest incident comes just days after Politico reported how White House staffers will either mute Biden or turn off his remarks out of anxiety that he will veer away from the West Wing's carefully orchestrated messaging. Herein lies the problem. Every president has messaging, no matter who the president is. Every president has speechwriters. Every president has strategists who help him with the messaging. And typically what they do is they say, hey, follow this particular messaging script that we're giving you and don't go off of it. But apparently Biden isn't even capable of doing that. So therefore, they've devised a strategy and a system in the White House and elsewhere to just cut the feed every time he doesn't stay on script. And what a compare and contrast to Donald Trump, right? Trump never stayed on message. I mean, he refused to listen to the experts in the White House. I'm talking about the political experts about how to control a message and build a coalition. It was the opposite. He was completely undisciplined. And now we have another president who's undisciplined as well, but because he's probably in early stage dementia. And you have to wonder, and this is really serious stuff, who is in charge at the White House? We can't have people who are unelected be in charge of the president of the United States and literally being in charge and telling him he can't talk. It's super dangerous, podcast listeners. I can't say this enough. I can't say this enough. We have to do something about this. And I'm not saying I want the president of the United States impeached. I would just want I want the media to be honest and start talking about this. And maybe saying, hey, look, historically, when was the last time we had a president where the staff pulled the feed kind of on a regular basis as the president was talking for fear of what he might say? When was the last time that happened? And who actually makes that decision? Specifically in the White House, who makes that decision? Who's making the call? Who's saying, hey, Tom, you know, the guy that's doing the, you know, the sound and the video. Hey, Tom, you know, when I give you the thumbs up, cut it. You know, who's that guy? What is his name? What's his job title? We have a right to know this. We absolutely have a right to know this. And we must know this as a country because, quite frankly, I kind of wonder if there is some sort of crisis overseas with China. I'm talking about a very serious crisis. If China decides to do something extreme in the world, maybe with Taiwan or others, I kind of wonder who then is going to control that? Who is going to be making that decision?